With a couple of months to go in the AFL season, there are factions of footy fans that are looking towards the off-season, this guy included. And when it comes to the free agency market, Harry Himmelberg is the man who seemingly has the most suitors. So, let's talk about where Harry Himmelberg will be playing his footy next year, and also, what position is he going to play? Let's go. And just before we get started, guys, nearly 3/4 of you that have watched my videos in the past 90 days have not clicked that subscribe button, so if you could, I would really appreciate that and stay up to date with everything that's going on with the Daz Talks Footy family. Now, let's start with where Harry Himmelberg's best position is, and I thought to myself, is this swingman vibe that he's got real? Is it real? So let's go to his career stats, and I'm thinking, what would really make a good defensive game? Because it's kind of impossible unless you actually go back and watch visually every single game that a player plays. What is a good defender's game and what is a good forward's game? I don't say this to be coy, and this bit isn't about Harry at all, but tall players can have bad days at either end of the ground, and I don't really think that should count towards what makes them a better player. That's just me. So I thought, okay, if you can have 5 rebound 50s or more, clearly you've worked hard in the defensive half, you're trusted with the ball in moving it out of the defensive half, which I think is what Harry can do down back. And then a good game up forward, I'm calling 3+. Now, those that watched footy in the 80s are laughing right now. In the 90s, I understand that, but I'm talking modern footy. I'm not the kind of person that thinks 3 is a bag, so we're not going that far. But in modern footy, I think 3+ is better than an average forward and a pretty good day out. So that's what I'm going with. So in doing my research, I can finally confirm that Harry Himmelberg is, I don't know what he is. They're very similar numbers there. I have no clue. So in racking my brain, I thought, I've got to go to the man himself. So, without further ado, here is me officially asking Harry Himmelberg of the GWS Giants whether he thinks he is a centre-half forward or a centre-half back. Of course I didn't ask him. He wouldn't know who I am. And frankly, shame on you for thinking that was true. I wouldn't have a clue what he thinks. And why would he tell me before the meet? Come on, people. Seriously, we're doing our best here. But the point is that we don't know. The good news, and what kind of makes the meat of this video, is the teams that are chasing him need to figure that out. And they need to figure it out before they sign him. And they kind of need to stick to it. I feel like it would be a pretty dick move to sign a guy with what looks like a 4 or 5 year deal, whether that's at the Giants or at a different club, to keep chopping and changing him around. Now, I know the Giants have had to do that out of necessity, and I'll talk about that in the Giants bit, but let's start with him leaving. If he does leave, there are 4 clubs I think suit him the best and have some sort of interest in him, and let's stay in New South Wales and talk about Sydney. The hardest one to judge here, Buddy is on the way out in terms of his age, whether that's this year or next year, we don't know. I think it's going to be this year for what it is worth, but we don't know what's going on with Paddy McCartan either. So they really do need tools at either end. I know they just picked up a centre-half back in the mid-season draft, but, and I don't say this to disrespect anyone who's come through the mid-season draft, they are a bonus. They are not, I think, the goal. I know Jimmy Blank for my Hawks is, the exception, I think, to some people's rule, but Jimmy Blank is not one of the best 10 key defenders in the competition. So the point still stands. If you've got a good key defender or key forward in the mid-season draft, great. If you can find one, awesome. That's a gold nugget. I don't think it should stop you from acquiring other key position talent in that area. I'm not sure how the Swans would go with just Tom McCartan as their, one tall and someone like an Aaron Francis down back. Although I think Francis has been quite good at different patches of 2023. Himmelberg really would shape them up down there. Amadi and Logan McDonald would get free reign to the forward line, and the Swans would have to find a way post Buddy to score. I think if Himmelberg goes to the Swans, they need him as a centre-half back. Stevie J on Triple M, who, by the way, I'm a massive fan of. I love Stevie J on the radio. It's extraordinary. Asking Scotty Selwood about Harry Mackay is probably my favourite moment of this year. But as a former Giants assistant coach, he was asked by the panel on a particular day where his best position is. He thinks it's centre-half back. I'm going to trust him on that because he's had more experience with Harry than I have. But for the Swans, he would need to be their centre-half back, for sure. Now, would that work for the Swans? Absolutely. Would that work for Harry? I think so. I think there are a lot of fantasy and supercoach players that think the same. But the Swans are definitely in the mix. I think they need him as a centre-half back, a permanent one. And Sydney are right up there in acquiring his services for mines. But let's go to Victoria for the other three sides. And let's start with the worst out of those three sides, and that is my Hawks. Even though we've got Will McCabe coming as a father-son and Denver Granger Barris is still developing in the VFL, albeit trialled as a forward on the weekend of the recording of this video, kicking 4 against Port Melbourne, which is a good start, but nowhere near what is required for him to be a centre-half forward in the AFL. Harry coming in would be, I think, splitting in terms of fans over where they want him. Now, there is reports that Hawthorn are interested in Jake Riccardi as well. Could they land both, potentially? Hawthorn, kind of like the Bombers, who aren't in this video, but do have a war chest in terms of plenty of money that they can throw around for players, so I think that would work. Riccardi wouldn't be on massive coin, I don't think. We know Himmelberg might be looking at 900 grand a year, which, and I like Harry as a player, is ridiculous. I know you got to overpay to get blokes out of their clubs, I understand that, but that is extraordinary amount of money in my opinion. But the Hawks could afford that if that's what the market dictates that he is worth. It's not up to me or a potential commenter below what his value is. If the market says that clubs are willing to pay 900, well, if you want him, you're going to have to pay 900 for 5, probably. I do think the Hawks would need him at centre-half back. I know we need a centre-half forward, even if Riccardi comes or not, or a Mitch Georgiades, or someone like that, or we draft one. Does Archer Reed make it to our second-round pick, maybe? I don't know. But there is a very real chance that if the Hawks did pick up Harry, they would put him behind the ball. The Hawks look lost without James Sicily in the side. They look lost with Sicily as the centre-half back as well. Think of the games against St Kilda and against Brisbane. He was not the centre-half back on those occasions, and he was the best on the ground in both those games, and it wasn't really that close. Now, the Hawks using Harry as a centre-half forward could work. He and Mitch Lewis would be a decent enough tandem. He's kicked 157 goals from 141 games right now. Has Harry, so you get that goal in a bit of game. Now, that has impacted a bit because A, the Giants weren't that great at times when he's been there, and B, like I said, he has had to play some games down back. So the Hawks would have to figure it out. If I had to put my money on it, I kind of disagree with a lot of Hawthorn fans that I'm seeing on social media. If the Hawks were to pick up Harry, it would be as a centre-half back. But let's move on to the two clubs that need him as a centre-half forward, and that is Richmond and Collingwood, and let's start with the Tigers. Doing a better job than Carlton did in the mid-2010s by picking up washed GWS players and then not being able to make them into decent enough guys, with Matt Kennedy being the obvious exception here. The Tigers have been able to do pretty well out of this. Hopper and Torano have had really good years. Yes, Hopper's been injured, and you can keep bashing Torano for his ball use all you want. He's currently winning Richmond's best and fairest, and if you don't think that's a win from a Richmond point of view, you're crazy and you're kidding yourself. Himmelberg would help in this sense. They would need to go forward with Jack Riewoldt coming to the end of a magnificent career, an almighty one, and to think he's talked about in the same conversation as Nick. Now, he's definitely had the better career in terms of accomplishments. Whether you think he's a better player or not, he's probably not the subject of this video, but that is the part of the ground that they need help in. Samson Ryan could be a really talented forward ruck, but I don't think he's a centre-half forward for the future. Harry would help, whether it's Andrew McQualter or the next coach come in and have a forward impact plan with Tom Lynch due back, at the end of this year and definitely for round 1 next year, we hope. Something would have to go disastrously wrong, and that's not what we're about on Daz Talks Footy, wishing injuries on anyone. But Himmelberg and Lynch solves a lot of problems, and then you've got, your Grimes down there, Josh Gibkiss, who we haven't seen really at all this year, down there as well. Vlost and Broad can play those hybrid key back roles at times as well, and I'm sure I've missed someone in there, and I apologize. Noel Bolter is the man that I've missed down there, who's already a gun. Although, has kind of been caught out in some one-on-one scenarios. But I think their key backs are worth, expanding with Grimes as that veteran leader and Bolter and Gibkiss as the two below. They would need Harry Himmelberg as a forward. Would I pay 900 grand for Harry Himmelberg's goal-ish per game as a forward? I struggle with that, and Richmond's game style isn't exactly kicking it to his advantage. That's not what they're about, and we've seen times where Tom Lynch has struggled against really, really good teams to actually break away and get some space. Where Lynch has been able to impact, though, is his ability to be a contested marker and be so good with his body use. He's able to either draw things like free kicks, and his ability below his knees is actually underrated for a key forward. But it's not like, say, a Hawthorn in the mid-2010s where someone like Harry Himmelberg would be laced out with every forward 50 kick. Dion Prestia is an underrated kick, but still not an ultimately great one. Hopper and Taranto aren't fantastic kicks of the footy. Harry Himmelberg would have to rely on an aging Dusty or a Shea Bolton in order to deliver the ball on his chest. But as we've seen, if he's playing from behind, he's got a hell of a leap on him, so maybe it could work in a big, big way. The Richmond fit is obvious for mine, and they're fighting with Sydney of the three teams that I've talked about so far as the most likely destination. For Harry, I think Hawthorn is at the bottom of that list. And I think that might be a mistake for the Hawks, but that's not the title of this video. I think Richmond are going to pursue him hard. I think they should, and it would be a really good fit. So let's go to the best of the Victorian teams that will be chasing him, and that is the Pies. He and Dan McStay would be fighting for that number one forward spot, which is a really interesting mix. How Collingwood are this good without a recognised tall forward is insane. Brody Myerchak is the most underrated player in the game, I think, at the moment, just because this isn't like Richmond circa 2017. It's not they've got one of the best key forwards in the game, and then Shane Edwards is your centre-half forward, and no one loves Shano more than me from an outer Richmond point of view. I loved him, but lining up at centre-half forward was crazy, and it worked with their game style. Now, Collingwood's happy handball game, their ability to take territory, win contested ball, and just flood you with an offensive game plan that overwhelms teams, especially late in games with how superior their fitness is. What I really like about this from Harry's point of view is, yes, he will be a 1 or a 1.5 kind of tall forward if you compare him with Dan McStay. I think Himmelberg's a better player than McStay, but they're both essentially going to play the same role, I should say. And it's not like they're going to be just wrestling in the goal square, either of them, and then not be able to do anything else. Himmelberg is an athlete. He's going to be able to get on the move. Again, Collingwood aren't exactly a team outside of 3 or 4 really, really good kicks that laying the ball really well into space. So how good Himmelberg's going to be below his knees is going to be imperative, but he's going to be able to create a contest down the line. Mason Cox is not going to be there forever. And the good news for Collingwood fans is that he's not going to have to pinch hit in the ruck either, with McStay able to do that, and of course Darcy Cameron as their number one ruckman. Himmelberg can just be an offensive threat forward of the ball all the time, and Collingwood need to go after him hard, I think. For Collingwood and Richmond, he's a need. I think for Hawthorn, he's a want. For Sydney, he's definitely a need. But what about his home club? Is it worth the Giants paying him $800,000-900,000 to stay? Well, let's talk about the Giants. If you had told me coming into round 1 I was going to say the following sentence, I probably would have slapped you because it sounds just preposterous. But Harry Himmelberg staying at the Giants might depend on if Jake Riccardi stays at the Giants. I'm not sure if getting rid of them both and just having Aaron Cadman and Jesse Hogan as your forward threats is a great idea, or Jack Buckley and Sam Taylor down back. Taylor's a star, as we know, and Jack Buckley's come along really, really well this year. But having that swingman effect of Harry has been really good for the Giants, who, by the way, are the most underrated team in the competition at the time of recording. They're 10th on the ladder with a new coach. Adam Kingsley is flying under the radar beautifully. I loved him as an assistant coach. I love the fact he got the Giants job, and I love what he's doing. Now, is it worth having the insurance policy when you've got a midfield that's in their prime, but the rest of the crew is developing? Yes, that veteran leadership, even though he is not at a veteran age yet, is awesome. The best thing that you can have as a veteran is experience with age still on your side. And there isn't a lot of downside, I don't think, to Harry moving on. They are going to get pretty good compensation for him. That might help them trade up for pick 1. But the Giants here are in a win-win scenario. The only way this could go badly is if they matched a bid for him, tried to get a trade, and then don't get what they would have got with the compensation out of it. But if Harry does move on and they get pick 1 and they get Harley Reid, they're going to consider that a win. Now, can they afford, even with Harry's salary off the books, to pay, say, pick 4, pick 6, and, another first rounder, the compensation that they're going to get for Harry in 3 years' time? That's going to be really interesting to see. I think the Giants are definitely going to want to move up to pick 1, or perhaps on draft night, trade back, get a bounty of future picks, and keep this young brigade going. But for the Giants, now they could love him, absolutely, and pay him. That's totally fair. But there isn't really a lot of downside for the Giants here, which, if you've got a free agent, is perfect. Let them make a decision. There's a spot there for Harry if he wants it. There's plenty of upside for the Giants if he wants to go. So if I have to rank the 4 clubs that aren't the Giants here, I'm going to put Hawthorn at 4, I'm going to put Collingwood at 3, I'm going to put Sydney at 2, and Richmond at 1. But if you want me to slide the Giants there in this top 5, I'm going to put the Giants at 3, dead set in the middle there, above Collingwood and just below the Swans. What do you guys think? Comment below, let me know. Where do you think Harry Himmelberg is going to be playing his footy in 2024? I hope you enjoyed the video. Like it. If you liked the video, subscribe to join the Daz Talks Footy family. Hope you have a fantastic week. Hope your team goes well, unless you barrack for the Giants, because that's where my Hawks are going this weekend. I'll see you next week. Goodbye.